Hi, and welcome back to Rose Connections. Today is a relationship reboot day. And so, relationship reboot, we are shifting our perspective just a little bit, and we're shifting our interactions with others just a little bit to better meet someone where they are, to better meet ourselves where we are. Sometimes we are forcing ourselves to fit into a very tight mold that doesn't fit who we actually are. And so, relationship reboot is about being able to show up authentically as yourself and be able to love and understand the people who are showing up authentically as themselves. Or that's one definition of it. And today's topic is about celebrating the diversity of family. And so, there's going to be a whole lot of definitions that we defy with that one topic. And when we talk about celebrating the diversity of family, I am talking about way more than just who you live with or who your kids are or who your parents were or who your ancestors were. I am talking about just a very broad, heart-centered application of what family is for us. And I really wanted to get off of the sort of trauma train that I have been on for the last couple of weeks, and lighten it up a little bit because we are smack dab in the middle of Mother's Day. Was just a couple of weeks ago. Father's Day is coming up in a few more weeks, and we have Pride starting in June. For most jurisdictions, some places, it's just a summer-long celebration, which I am totally in favor of. I want rainbows all the time. That was my favorite color as a kid, was rainbow, because I just could not ever choose one color that I loved more than others. And that's not terribly off topic for my definition of family. So I think most of us, when we think about family, we have one very specific sort of image in mind. You know, it might be a picture of the family that we grew up with, our family of origin. It could be a collection of faces, Brady Bunch style, of a blended family. It could be just flipping through your phone and all the text messages, and every message is from a friend that you consider family. We have a very broad experience as human beings with the term family. There's a lot of it that might be culturally inherited or taught, meaning that, certain cultures, certain backgrounds, certain, religious, communities or intentional communities might define family very differently than others. And for example, in the queer community, if I am at an event and I meet up with one of my queer friends from the LGBT community, I'm bisexual myself, I might ask them, "Hey, is that person over there, are they family?" That's a way of me asking, "Hey, is that someone I can be safe to be myself in front of?" It's not necessarily even someone that I would consider my family in terms of someone that I connect to or that resonates with me, but I know that they're safe. And I think when we look at this idea of family, we know that there are bureaucratic definitions that are in place for our policy reasons, or at least policy rationales that seem reasonable at the time. And for example, the U.S. Census Bureau defines a family is as a group of two people or more related by birth, marriage, or adoption and residing together. Well, already that does not meet my definition of family. My family's not included in that definition. I have to exclude people if I go by that definition of family for myself, which is why very few of us should use bureaucratic definitions for ourselves, because usually they are created with the intent of a specific law or a specific outcome, or preventing a certain type of harm, or trying to narrow the focus for budget reasons, things like that. However, family is such an expansive term in how we experience it, what our lived experience of family is. Because that definition, two or more people related by birth, marriage, or adoption, and residing together, it excludes my stepson. My stepson, I call my son because he is. I am his mom insofar as I have been a primary mother figure in his life since he was 2.5, maybe 3 years old. But I never officially adopted him. And so while we are related by marriage, he also doesn't live here. He's 23 years old. He has a life of his own. He lives somewhere else. But I would still define him as family. There are other step families, though, who would not consider that stepmother or that stepfather to be family per se. They may not feel safe with that person. So that is not at all mentioned in this about what the experience of family is. And I look at, I used to be a divorce mediator. And in my divorce mediations, we would talk about these evolving ideas of what family is. Because when you have a family, especially a family with kids that has separated, maybe mom and dad have gone their separate ways, have maybe married someone else, married into other families, have now multiples of in-laws in their sphere in their social sphere. You have an ever expanding idea of what family is. I know another family that, it's basically these two best friends and their kids are all they all consider themselves to be family. They vacation together. They, I remember you can come to me with any questions that you have about sex, just the same way that you could go to your mom. We are totally on the same level with each other and we are all family. You are safe with us. And I think that idea of safety, number one, is very trauma informed, but is also, I think, such a key part of who we decide to call family. Because we have families of origin, or maybe families of obligation to some, who these might be the people who raised us. They may or may not even be our parents. They may have been parental figures in our lives. They may not have been related to us at all, including foster families, including adopted families. And they are no less a family than anything else. I've been watching Orphan Black a lot lately, and I won't spoil it too much. It's really kind of impossible to talk about it without spoiling it. But the main character grew up in a foster home with another kid named Felix. So you have Sarah and Felix, who are not blood related to each other, who are not related by birth, marriage, or adoption. And yet when she comes to town, he's the first one that she seeks out because they're family. And later on, other family members end up calling him sister and whatever else, because that expansive definition of who we deem to be family is infinitely fascinating. Because we have grandparents who are raising kids. Because maybe the parents are incarcerated, or maybe they're gone, or maybe they work really late shifts and can't pick up the kid in time, and so grandparent watches them 5 days a week. I would consider my great aunt Steffi, who babysat me every day of my life for the first 6 years of my life, I consider her to be family. Of course she's family. She's technically related to me. She's the wife, or she was the wife of my grandpa's godfather. But when I talk about, say, some cultural traditions that have that godparents, in many families, Catholic families, are considered family members. And we also look at those best friends and neighbors and friends as family and work families, and which may or may not actually be healthy. We have neighborhoods that come together that feel like family. And when we create these really strong social support networks, whether it be from the folks that raised us or who gave us some genetic commonalities, let's just call it that, or the folks that have surrounded us and become so important in our lives that we elevate them to this idea, or we bring them in really close to this intimate idea of family, families of choice. And all of it is valid. Not all of it may be legally valid. You may not be able to go out and get health insurance for your best friend using that definition of family. But that is actually something I want us to challenge and wrestle with a little bit. I think a lot of us have accepted that there's just one definition of family, and yet there are just so many different definitions of family. It is entirely about this creating a space for ourselves. The ideal family for me is creating a space for ourselves where we feel at home. We feel like we belong. We feel like we are appreciated. We feel like we're heard and accepted, loved, safe. That is what I want family to be for us. And sometimes our families of origin or obligation are not those people for us. Sometimes there are just maladaptive patterns and dysfunction that is harmful. And it's okay to detach from the obligations around that in order to find those support systems that are going to bring out the best in us. They're going to challenge us. And not challenge us like you're wrong and you need to do better, but hey, you know what? I love you, but we got to talk about what just happened. Or have you thought of? Because our families ideally are the folks who are invested in our success, who are intimate enough, who understand us enough, who are reverent enough and celebratory enough of our goodness and our potential, who love us even when we make mistakes, who accept us, who bring us back in even when we have done something wrong. And I don't care how small or how little or how big that is. All of us deserve to have folks that we can call on as family, even if they don't meet that census bureaucratic definition of family, even if they can't qualify for TANF on your household, even if we have to constrain it for other reasons. But I want to challenge us to think beyond those constraints, to envision something. What could it help if we are more inclusive and understanding that family is not an objective standard or term, but it's a collective and individual expression of love. So that's my thought for today. I swear I have recorded this 7 times today because I go somewhere different every single time, and I just try to follow wherever I'm inspired to go, even if I have notes, because I promise I have notes that I use. I just don't always stick with them. So thanks again for joining me today. I really just appreciate doing these videos and knowing that they resonate with you on some level. If you want to do more to support what I'm doing, to support the time that I spend doing these videos, I urge you to sign up for my Patreon page. That is patreon.com/rosegoldheart. Temple of the Rose Gold Heart is what I call it, because I view us as all kind of creating our own temples of belief, of understanding, of authenticity, of our true fire, to house our true fire. And that we're going to go out and set the world on fire in wonderful, wonderful ways. So as part of those offerings at the $3 level, I provide a weekly oracle or tarot reading. Now, why do I use oracles and tarot cards? Not to tell you your future necessarily, but to reflect your current state, to reflect what is currently happening for you in the world, out just the collective energy of where we are right now, and what are some loving perspectives that we can add to that to help us see and understand those different facets of life much more deeply and with greater clarity. That's all. At my $8 level of the Patreon, I'm actually going to be starting to release chapters of my new book that is coming up. I am actually writing a book about soul families, past lives, all sorts of kind of some fun woo stuff, but also some really intense policy and political stuff that happens in it too. And implications for how we can see ourselves and heal ourselves and connect with those people who really are here to help us realize our true purpose in life. And that's what I view as a soul family. If that is of interest to you, patreon.com, Rose Gold Heart. Come find me there. Come support me there. Help contribute to what I do and getting this message out. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to our next Radiant Resilience video, which is also going to follow along with that tower theme that I have been doing since March. So I'm very much looking forward to that one next week. Take care.